3 months ago, Trump could not remember his wife's name. Now, maybe because he's had so many wives, and he also Trump said at one meeting, speaking out loud in front of the reporters, that he beat Obama in the presidential race, and people are going, Obama? No, you didn't run against Obama.
Well, the president's been meeting Vice President Kamala Harris and other key allies, including lawmakers and a group of Democratic governors, as he faces mounting questions over whether he should continue his bid for another term in office. Pressure's been mounting since his stumbling performance in last week's first presidential debate. And tonight, the New York Times reported he had told an ally he's weighing up whether or not to fight on. That has been denied as absolutely false by a White House spokesperson. Well, Bob Mulholland is a friend of President Biden's. He's a Democratic strategist and joins us now. Good evening to you, Bob.
Hey, good evening. Good evening.
Well, we've heard those flat denials from the White House, but do you think President Biden is really thinking again about whether he should continue with this battle?
No, and somebody allegedly said something to the New York Times, but at least from what I heard, there's no name to that.
No, there doesn't seem to have been a name put to that. Oh, it looks as though we have just temporarily lost Bob Mulholland. We're just going to see if we can re-establish the connection there with him. He was speaking about that report. It was in the New York Times earlier, where it seems that Joe Biden told a close ally that he was considering pulling out. I think we've got Bob back again.
Yes.
No, I mean, there was no name in that New York
Yeah,
Times story, but it did say that he told one of his close allies that he is just considering whether it's the right decision for him to go on.
I don't believe any of that. Obviously, anybody can say, oh, this candidate or that candidate's thinking about it. Look, the debate was not a good night for us, but it's just one part of a long campaign. We got 4 months to go. We may have another debate, but more importantly, when Trump is designated as the nominee of the Republican Party this month, and then next month, President Biden, Kamala Harris, we'll have a real race. And I think we, the Democrats, can focus on the issues that American people, especially reproductive rights, which Trump is committed to taking away and putting women into prison. Reagan in 1984 had a bad debate, and people started with Mondale and started talking about, oh, he's finished. And then he had a great debate and went on to win 49 states. No one should look at this week and say, oh, that's what the campaign is. No, it's not. We got a long way to go. And the reason the governors are in D.C. is just a meeting with the president. They're in D.C., Washington, D.C., at a regularly scheduled meeting. So it's good that they're there and they can get pepped up. And my governor, California, Gavin Newsom, is going to be in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and New Hampshire this weekend, advocating for President Biden. So we're on offense.
Well, I mean, he's somebody who's been talked up as a potential replacement for Joe Biden. I mean, do you not share the concerns of some in your party who think that you do just need a younger candidate?
I shouldn't say most, but probably a lot of voters have said in polls in the last several months, they wish both candidates were younger. There's not much difference between a 79 and 81-year-old or 82-year-old. So, yes, it's true. People say, oh, I wish these two were younger. But this is not 1960 with Jack Kennedy running against Dick Nixon. This is 2024 with two candidates that, yes, are older. And we're going to have to face that reality. And I think voters ultimately, after both conventions, will say to themselves, okay, these are not the two best guys that I wanted, as if they had two best guys somewhere. But let me see who the real candidate is I want to be president for the next 4 years.
Isn't part of the problem, Bob, that performance at the debate, and I watched the whole thing, and it was actually quite difficult to watch because it did seem as though he was losing his place. He was forgetting the point that he was trying to make. And this hasn't been an isolated incident, has it? I mean, we've seen a whole series of incidents where he appears to have looked somewhat confused. I mean, he does seem to be showing his age more than his big rival, Donald Trump.
I'll let your listener, 3 months ago, Trump could not remember his wife's name. Now, maybe because he's had so many wives, and he also, Trump said at one meeting, speaking out loud in front of the reporters, that he beat Obama in the presidential race. And people are going, Obama? No, you didn't run against Obama. So both these candidates have moments where we say, "Oh, can't remember things." Hey, I think there's nobody in the world that doesn't have such moments. But obviously, it's different when you're running for president. We got to show the Joe that I know, the Joe Biden that's alert, sharp, and when he's meeting with foreign leaders, he knows what the hell we're doing.
Is there a way that if Joe Biden does decide that it is the right thing for his party, he could be replaced at this late stage? As you say, he's been through that big process of all the different primaries and so on to be confirmed as the Democratic candidate. But presumably, if he did decide it was best to stand aside, a way could be found to try and select a replacement.
Well, generically, I'll say this, that our national convention is the week of August 19th. And that's when there's over 4,000 delegates. All of them, but like two or three, are for Biden. And they're the ones that decide on that Thursday night or Wednesday night. I don't know the schedule yet. In the week of August 19th, who gets the majority of the delegates. That's a normal process. And obviously, historically, like in the 1800s, those kind of conventions went for weeks. Lately, they have not gone. So I don't expect any big surprises at the convention. I expect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to be our nominees, and we'll get going from there.
Uh, Are you not concerned, though? I'm looking at the latest poll that puts Trump 6 points ahead. That's up from 2 in February. I've also seen a recent poll showing that he's got a narrow but clear lead in those key swing states where this election will be decided. I mean, you point out rightly that there are concerns about both candidates. But this poll also said that 80% of Americans believe that Biden is too old to be president again. I mean, if voters are that concerned about it, couldn't that actually cost you the election?
Well, we, the Democrats, have to make the campaign. We got to start hitting above the belt against Trump and all his problems. We cannot allow this to be one-sided, like all the focus is on our candidate, President Biden. I'll just give you one example how what the Republicans do. President Biden was in Europe and he's meeting with 4 or 5 leaders, and he walks off to act. I was a paratrooper in Vietnam. He walks off to talk to a paratrooper that had just landed, and the Republicans put out a video showing as if Biden was just walking off. Well, if you're the average voter, you're watching that. Oh, there must be a problem. But actually, he was going over to talk to a paratrooper, and I had great respect for that because I was a paratrooper in Vietnam. So my point is, with Democrats, we are far behind the curve. We have to get our own videos out and show all the problems that Trump has, whether walking down the steps, not remembering his wife's name, and the other things. But we got to be on stronger offense.
What does Joe Biden have to do now then to convince not just people like yourself and people within the party that
Yeah.
they're right to stick with him, but that voters, that he has got it in him, not just to see through this campaign and see off Donald Trump, but to serve another term in the White House with all the pressures that that brings?
Well, right now expectations are low. So, and in 4 months, that gives the opportunity. The day after the debate, President Biden spoke at a rally in North Carolina, a key state for the election in November 5th. And I thought he was just the Joe Biden that many of us know. He was on offense. He was speaking very articulate and making the case for the Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to get reelected. I believe Biden has to do a lot of them, not 2 or 3 a day, but several a week in some of those key states, including my own home state of Pennsylvania. And that will then say the voters can say, "Oh, okay, maybe it was just one bad night. He's looking a lot sharper now." Remember, this is
But
not
if
an
he has
election.
another bad night, I mean, it could be really
Well,
serious, couldn't it?
well, and Trump could have a bad night too. Anything could happen. Another war could start. Another war could end. The economy could tank. All kinds of issues. Now, President Eisenhower, Republican, in his first term in the 50s, he had several heart attacks. Well, that raised a lot of concern. He got reelected and completed all 8 years. And President Roosevelt, who won the World War II along with Winston Churchill, he was in a wheelchair, polio from years ago. So many of our presidents were old for the time. Obviously now, men and women, mostly men, have caught up to live a lot longer. And I am very convinced that President Biden can do it. He's not going to win the Tour de France like some British guy may, but we can win the presidency.
Bob Mulholland, Democrat strategist, friend of Joe Biden's. Good to speak to you. Thanks so
Good to hear you.
much.
Thank you.